Hi everyone. So today I'm going to Prague to give a lecture on our bodies and how they behave in different densities and different dimensions. And I thought of making this video to kind of sum up this research that I've been doing. From my own experience, when I journey to the parallel 3D planet Earth, the original planet Earth, which is much softer density and is more light-based, the body is really similar, but it's more, I would say, more beautiful. When I look at myself from above, lying there while incarnating here, because as I talk about it in other videos, some of us incarnate this way, that they kind of leave their soft density bodies resting and their consciousness shifts into this matrix. So I see that body as being very light. The skin is very light and I can see through it into my body. The blood is kind of rainbow-like, clear liquid. It's not red. And the organs are beautiful, like masterpieces. They're like kind of like gems or like crystals. They're really beautiful. And my skin is very kind of almost transparent. But then sometimes when I journey and I walk through the streets of the different cities there, I see different kinds of beings. I see the smaller elves or the hops, and also the pixies, and they're all fully clothed, so I'm not sure like how they have it like going on there, but I sense that they're all kind of more light based. They're not as dense, as heavy as we are in this form, this body form in this matrix. It's like a very condensed matter here, so they seem more ethereal. And they seem more vibrant somehow. I've also seen beings there that are like half human, half animal. So for example, the fauns that we know from legends and mythologies. There are many of them, all kinds of families and clans I've seen, and they live even in the town cities. They're not just nature-based, they live in the towns and cities. And then I've also seen like very tall kind of giant beings, and the animals are different too. There are different forms of animals. For example, I call them cat giants, because they are kind of like felines, but they're not humanoid. They're just like cats standing on their hind legs. And then there are these kind of like colorful bears, something between a bear and a cat. They have really big eyes that are like rainbow-like of different colors, but their bodies tend to be like purple, indigo, or blue. And they're really beautiful beings. I've seen families of them in the forests. And sometimes when I look at these beings, these animals or these different humanoid beings that live in harmony in that soft density earth, that throughout history has been called the fairy realm or the other world, or like our parallel fairy or elven neighbors, I become aware that we used to know them. That's why many of them appear in our legends and mythologies, because this is our distant past and distant future, when the planet was still soft density. Now we are just in this kind of weird time loop of this matrix, contemporary, but in the distant future I see us going back there. So we will probably like get used to being with these different beings, and also different extraterrestrials from that soft density space or universe, because it's a different universe there as well. So there are just all kinds of beings, and they're more ethereal and light-based. And the astral body, I've been wondering about that for a long time, because I'm not so familiar with the astral. For me, astral, always when I inner journey, I avoid it, and I've been kind of guided by my spirit guides to avoid it, because it's this in-between. So it's still partially influenced by this matrix, like the afterlife matrix, and there are all kinds of tricks in the afterlife matrix. So I avoid that when I inner journey. But from what I studied or learned, I understand it that the astral body or the astral sphere kind of started to be like this in between, or it started to be used as a word for the in between um, around the end of 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, when the Theosophic Society, Madame Blavatsky and Steiner, started to talk about the astral as the in-between, because before that the astral was just space or universe, the place of stars. Astrum is stars, so the place of stars. And then the vocabulary changed, and esoteric since then has been using the term astral for this in-between, but it's still a part of the matrix. That's why the people that are used to astral traveling or astral projecting, they describe the astral body as being quite similar to the physical one. It dies eventually as well. It's just like this in-between body before we reach the free afterlife. So that body seems to be different from the soft density one. I often wondered, when I traveled to my soft density past and future Earth, the one that I visit often in my dreams and during my inner journeys, I often wondered, is it actually the astral? And no, it isn't, because it's just like here. We are born there and we die. We die consciously and we are born consciously, and our awareness remains open to our other layers of our energy field, or our other dimensional selves, which I will get to later. But it's different than the astral body, because the astral body is really like the in-between, and it's very much, it helped me also to read the work of Barbara Ann Brennan, who describes the different layers of the energy field based on her experiences with healing different energy bodies, different energy levels. And she says that the astral body is very much, or the astral as such, is very much about the belief system. So what we believe we are, or that's how we manifest, that's how we are. In the free afterlife, or what I call in my new book, Parallel Worlds, the prime reality, because that's really where the 3D worlds were created. It's the prime reality, where everything always exists. It's beyond time, so it's just existence of all kinds of worlds. It's a very creative dimension where you can create endless worlds, endless versions of yourself and of your surroundings, and we co-create together. And there's so many parallel worlds of all kinds of anything you can imagine. It's a dimension that works with fantasy, and it's beyond the limitation of matter and time. So there, our body is whatever we want it to be. We can shapeshift into anything. We can become a bird, then we can become a unicorn, then we can turn into a human, or we can turn into an elf, or we can turn into elephant. Whatever is we can imagine, we can be. So the fifth dimensional body is changeable, and it depends on the consciousness. Some consciousness decides to just keep one form and be in one world. Other consciousness likes to change all the time. So it's limitless. I suppose that I wouldn't even call it body then, because it's just the consciousness taking a certain form. And it's always connected to its multidimensionality. So it's always connected to its sixth dimensional self, to the consciousness in the seventh dimension and eighth dimension, ninth dimension, and then back to the 10th that kind of goes back to the source, back to the first dimension. But also the second dimensional self, which from my experience is like the shapes, the patterns, the geometries, and the codes of creation that this world and all the other worlds are made of. It's like the base codes. So we have our second dimensional self as well. For me, that's the symbols. And when we create a symbol as a portal to another world, then it works like our 2D portal to the first dimension, which is the source of all the existence, the source of the absolute. So the second dimension is often forgotten because it's taken as something lower or something less important, but it's actually key. It's the key codes of creation there. And since I've been working with the runes and sacred geometry and magic symbols, that dimension is really beautiful to me, because we can create our different kind of codes for different kinds of worlds. It's work with fantasy, which is beyond the matrix, because you can be whatever you want to be. And if you create certain symbols or codes, for example, your personal symbol, or a symbol to connect with your spirit guides, or a symbol that represents a certain world in a 3D parallel timeline, or 3D parallel universe, or 3D parallel planet, or a symbol that represents a certain realm that is within the 5th dimension, where you have all kinds of realms, then that symbol takes you through the source into that place quite easily. And I describe in other videos how we can work with symbols as a creative way of making portals into parallel worlds and parallel dimensions. Since I started writing my books, the element of tree of life or world tree has been in every single book that I've written. It's a theme that I feel like I'm probably going to be exploring my whole life, because it's so fascinating to me, and I keep discovering new things about it. When I wrote my book Tree Magic, I kind of put together my research on the tree of life and the world tree and the electromagnetic field or energy field. And I came to understand what the differences are and what connects all this. So I'm going to try to explain it really simply. The tree of life is like a reflection of our energy field. If you look at our energy field, or in this matrix, it shows as electromagnetic field. It's the strongest around our heart, the seat of our soul, kind of. And when you look at it, it really looks like the Celtic tree of life, where the branches and the roots are connected and grow together into this one harmonious shape. And what's amazing about the Taurus and this tree of life symbol is that they represent this eternal flow of living energy or living energy field that kind of goes from the center out, so from the source to the absolute, and it flows in this amazing flow of energy, flow of life, the flow of creation. And it's kind of like breathing. It's like taking a breath and going back to the source. So it's like inhaling and exhaling ceaselessly. And it's a shape that is totally independent. It can survive on its own. It can sustain itself because it's always in its own kind of breath, in its own movement, and it's constantly rejuvenating, renewing. So it remains the same, yet it's constantly changing, constantly renewing itself. And we wouldn't really say evolving. That's a terminology of this matrix, to evolve or to reach from 0 till 10. Then you're some master, then you're like a advanced spirit. It's like the school system. No, the Taurus it just shows that we always are in this ever-flowing energy field. And so for me, that's the tree of life that sustains the creation, and it sustains us. And we kind of reflect, our energy field reflects the energy field of everything. The energy field of the planet, of different stars, of galaxies, it's all toroidal. And so the whole existence is tree of life, but we have our own tree of life, our own energy field that has these different layers, multidimensionality of our energy field, the different states of consciousness that are always here. It's not about going somewhere. Our 5th dimensional self, for example, is always here in our energy field. It's always in the here and the now, yet it's always changing and renewing itself. And the world tree is like this kind of multi-dimensional complex of all these worlds, all the branches of creation, all the roots and branches of different timelines. In a 3D perspective or 4D, we would see it as a tree that branches into infinite possibilities, of infinite versions of us, of this planet, of this universe. And then in the 5D sense of perception, we would understand it as like infinite possibilities, the ever-flowing world tree of different realms, different worlds, different 3D timelines or 3D worlds, but also the eternal 5D realms that are just always present and that can always remain the same or change. So that for me is the difference between the world tree and the tree of life, yet they are kind of connected and the same. And the electromagnetic field, it sustains the life of the planet, it sustains our life. So it's like the reflection of the eternal energy field while we are incarnated in matter. I came to understand also that the Merkaba, or the light body, is really the core of this energy field, of this tree of life and the world tree. It's kind of the geometry behind it, the double tetrahedron that we know from the work of Drunvalo Melchizedek, who wrote these amazing books about the Merkaba and the flower of life. And he says in his books that this double tetrahedron is like the core of the Merkaba. It's much larger, the Merkaba. It's like the energy field, the field of our multidimensionality, or that's how I understand it, that it's just the core of our multidimensional energy field, or our auric field, or our tree of life, we could say, which is just like the electromagnetic field in matter, in what we can observe in matter. The Merkaba connects all these ideas of the tree of life, world tree, this multidimensional complexity of the absolute and the source together, breathing, inhaling and exhaling throughout the ever-flowing possibility of existence and of creation. There's also the tree of knowledge from the Bible, the tree of knowledge between good and evil, but also the tree of enlightenment, which we find in Buddhism. And many stories tell us of beings finding enlightenment under a tree. And to me, that's all symbolic of discovering that tree of life, that energy field, that multidimensional energy field, or the electromagnetic field in this reality, that always is and sustains our consciousness in connection with the source and the absolute. So it's like a realization of our multidimensional selves that are always in parallel in all these different dimensions, in other words, different and wider states of consciousness. And also the connection to magic staffs, because there's a connection to the staff symbolizing the vortex of the energy field or the electromagnetic field, or kind of the trunk of the tree of life, if we look at the tree of life as a metaphor for the electromagnetic or energy fields. So it's like the staff of the magician or the witches or the wise women, as they used to be called before they were called witches. The wise women and the wise men that always carry the staff, and it's a reoccurring theme in many mythologies and traditions. So if you're interested in that, I have videos about the Tree of Life, World Tree and Magic Staffs on my YouTube channel from a few years ago when I gave some seminars on that topic. So it's really fascinating to discover our multidimensionality. And I feel like that's what it's all about, to realize that we are these amazing multidimensional beings, but while incarnated in this matrix, in this limited consciousness, we forget about it. And I feel like it's time to get back to that and to rediscover that, to free ourselves from this limited perception in this matrix, and also the realization that this is our future, because those of us who incarnate from the soft density original earth or the original space, we incarnate from the future where we are always connected to that multidimensionality. And it's interesting, I often lead inner dialogues with my cats, who are from that soft density earth as well, incarnated. And they told me to realize that you can use your higher dimensional abilities in 3D, like in that soft density earth, which is our distant past and future. We are aware of our higher dimensional selves, or our expanded, wider awareness. And now my cat Thora is looking at me directly, and she's agreeing. She's saying, yes, that's where the legends and stories come from, of the witches and wizards and the alchemists kind of being able to shapeshift or perform magic, because they were using their fifth dimensional gifts and selves to manifest certain things, or to change from a bird, for example, into a human, or change somebody else into a mouse, or into a bird, or into a piece of furniture. So that's where all our stories come from. We can and are able to use our multidimensionality in the 3D. It's just that the 3D, they also, my cats told me that to imagine like the higher states of consciousness, it's like a wider perception. And they likened it to, if we watch a movie, in 3D, it's like focusing on one movie fully, being in the experience. While, for example, in the 8th dimension, we see thousands of different kinds of movies being played at once. And with that awareness, with our 8th dimensional self, we are able to understand and look at all these different movies simultaneously. But in 3D, we only look at one. And they say that sometimes it's necessary, to kind of zoom in to that one movie rather than watching it all. Because when you zoom into that one, then you can fully focus on it. So it's like kind of, they also likened it to observing a huge painting. That's like the 8th dimension. And then you zoom into one detail and you focus on that for some time. So that's like the 3D. So it's really just about wider and narrower perception, but there's nothing like better or worse. It's just then about, of course, how much you limit the consciousness to cut it away from the knowledge that there is the possibility of the wider perception.